Well, good morning. It is May 10th, and it's Saturday. And today's my brother's birthday, my oldest brother's birthday, so happy birthday, Steve. And we are doing our morning devotion / study, which is from Hebrews for Everyone by N.T. Wright. And we're moving on to chapter 2, and this is verses 1 through 4. So then, we must pay all the closer attention to what we have heard, in case we drift away from it. You see, if the word which was spoken through the angels was reliable, with appropriate punishment every time anyone broke it or disobeyed it, how shall we escape it if we ignore a rescue so great as this? It started by being declared through the Lord, and it was confirmed to us by those who heard him. And God bore witness as well, along with them in signs and wonders, and with many different types of powerful deeds, and by the Holy Spirit, distributed in accordance with his will. A well-known story imagines a devout Christian stuck on a ledge halfway down a cliff. Hundreds of feet below, the seas raged around jagged rocks. Above him is a sheer, unclimbable wall of rocks. He prayed fervently for God to rescue him. Suddenly, a huge eagle appears and invites him to climb on his back, and he refuses. A little while later, a helicopter comes by, but he waves it away. Then a light aircraft circles around, offering to drop a rope and a ladder. Again, he refuses it. And he continues to pray, Lord, why don't you rescue me? And God answers, I sent a bird, a helicopter, and a ladder, and you didn't use any of them. It's really a silly story, of course, but it makes several important points. God does indeed answer prayers, but not always in the way we expect. God frequently acts through what seems like nature or random events. If we wait for a bolt from the blue to guide us, heal us, or save us, we may miss the apparent ordinary means that God will use. A map to guide us, a doctor to heal us, a helicopter to rescue us. And we will look very stupid if we ignore the very thing God is doing for us on the grounds that it isn't what we expected or perhaps wanted. In fact, the letter offers a sequence which looks for a moment not unlike the story. God had already sent the law through the angels. Look what happens if people ignore that. Now, what will happen if they refuse to listen to something even more important and more powerful? God may have concluded that they really aren't interested in being rescued, in being saved from the sin and injustice which rages around them like an angry sea, and which not only threatens to engulf us from our outside, but which we discover to our horror inside as well. That's why in this passage, and frequently later on, Hebrews insists not just that Christians must stick with what they've got, rather than abandoning it, but also they must pay closer attention, must go deeper into the truth and life which is there because they belong to the Messiah. The picture Hebrews uses in this first verse indeed may be echoing the very idea of a dangerous sea, in case we drift away from what we heard. Imagine being a little motorboat, some way out from shore, needing to find your way along the coast to the right harbor. You need to keep the engine running and a firm hand on the tiller. If you don't, there's no guarantee you will drift in the right direction, and even probably that you will drift in the wrong one, perhaps onto a rocky shore or out to the wild ocean where you can't see land anymore. This is a warning many Christians need, perhaps especially those who have grown up in Christian families or are part of a regular church community. It's all too easy to suppose that we can take the pressure off and allow other people to do the praying, the thinking, the serious business. We'll go along for the ride. We'll stop putting so much effort into it. We'll go with the flow. The problem is that if we haven't got our own motor running and our hands on the tiller, we may drift further and further away without realizing it. Or perhaps we may provide a drag on the others. A small boy I once knew was out shopping with his mother, who was pushing his larger sister in a pushcart. As he got tired and bored, he held onto the pushcart instead. But instead of using his own efforts to walk, he was hanging back so that his mother was dragging him along as well as pushing the baby and carrying the shopping. Often in church life often in the church life, there are people who have the effect on a congregation or fellowship. Often it's only some distance down the road when we realize what's going on. Each of us need to ask ourselves from time to time whether we are drifting type, or whether we are going forward day by day and year by year, paying closer attention to the message, and not assuming we know it all, and that we coast along there. The central contrast of this passage, obvious, is between the law of Moses, given through the angels, carrying warnings and penalty clauses for those who disobey it, and the message concerning Jesus. Modern Western Christianity have often seen this contrast in terms of the law as a threatening thing, and the gospel of Jesus as a soothing, comforting, healing thing. There's much truth in that, but if we forget the other side of it, we make the gospel a mere cozy blanket instead of embracing the challenging life that it really is. If the king, the president, the emperor, the prime minister, or whoever is important in our country sends you a message by a special messenger, would you pay attention to it? Would you? But if he turned up in person to see you, wouldn't you just pay attention? Would you feel your world was turned upside down? Well, the law was a message from the one true God, sent through special messengers, the angels, but in the message of the gospel, the King himself has come to speak to us directly. What will happen if we say we're too busy? We can't be bothered to come and to speak to him. We're reading a nice book and we can't tear ourselves away just now. The writer then offers clear evidence in case anyone should question him, that the coming of Jesus and the message which he came to them from him really was a visit from the King in person. Jesus himself had declared the good news of God's kingdom. Those who heard him confirmed that he had indeed been so. Then equally important, God himself bore witness to it. When the message was preached, things happened. Signs, wonders, mighty deeds, presumably often of healings that perhaps other things too. Some conversions, the transformation of families, synagogue communities, and villages. In particular, when people believe the message, they discover a strange new energy within themselves, a warm, disturbing personal presence which enables them to do new things, which puts new ideas into their heads, which motivates and energizes them to become different people from the inside out. The early Christians knew what to call this personal presence inside them. It's God's Holy Spirit, the gift of God's own presence and self, not just in Jesus, important though as it is, but living within them. Hebrews often refers to the Holy Spirit dwelling in people, but this passage and one or two others show that the writer takes it for granted. What evidence is there in your life or in your church that the gospel message of Jesus is true and powerful? If you find that question difficult to answer, could it be because you and your church have become adrift, ignoring the royal message to which we should be paying attention? And so, just to summarize this, so the writer of Hebrews is saying, don't be a follower. Don't just say, I believe in Jesus and this is what I want to believe, and then do nothing with it. Be a part of the community. Be active in community. Continue to grow. Continue to see that the message of the Messiah, the message of Jesus, was truly from God. And God came to visit us. Came to the doors of people to visit us and to deliver that message. And that message needs to be carried on from generation to generation. And so the writer, you can see, is building this case for who Jesus is. And so now he's saying that Jesus was God who came in person to knock on our door and to greet us and to give us the message of the gospel. So go forth this day in the peace and the love of Christ.